Welcome to a discussion on the graphic novel Fun Home. I'm Kevin.
I'm Jamie. We are discussing Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, and it is a tragic comedy. Kevin, describe the general plot of Fun Home.
I'd say Fun Home is an interesting novel, not only being a tragic comedy, but also being a memoir. The novel generally covers Alison's journey from childhood into adulthood, with a deep dichotomy between Alison's coming out and realizing her own sexuality, mirrored against her father's repression of his sexuality, which you come to learn throughout the tail end of the novel. There's a particularly interesting quote included in the novel about sexuality that goes as follows. I suppose that a lifetime spent hiding one's erotic truth could have a cumulative renunciatory effect. Sexual shame is in itself a kind of death. I think this quote holds a lot of weight when viewed through the lens of the novel's main theme, as Alison's father steadily dies throughout the novel because of his sexual repression. In no way is he allowed to live his real life aside from in small, fleeting moments, and this inevitably leads to her father's suicide, which has an air of mystery around it throughout most of the novel until she comes to terms not only with his suicide, but the full scope of her own sexuality. Alright, Jamie, leading from that, what would you say is the central theme of the novel?
The central and overall theme of Bechdel's Fun Home is self-actualization. Because the main character and narrator of the novel grows up with her father forcing a feminine identity upon her, Alison is in conflict with who she truly is and wants to be versus who her father tries to mold her into. The theme of self-actualization entails sub-themes such as sexuality and gender identity. Growing up, Alison struggles to embrace her sexuality because of the feminine mold her dad tries to squeeze her into. It's not until the scene where Alison is in a diner with her dad and a woman dressed in men's clothing walks in that Alison realizes there are other people like her who embody how she feels and who she wants to be. On page 118 of the memoir, she says, "I didn't know there were women who wore men's clothes."
Now, would you say that the medium, that being a graphic novel, detracts or enhances the novel's message?
I would say Alison's story and message being told through a graphic novel medium enhances the memoir. A story being told through illustration and text bubbles gives the audience a feeling and connection that cannot be met through written word. The body language the audience sees as they read the dialogue and narration gives them a tone and feeling to the words. A graphic approach to a novel also engages an audience who has difficulty reading a written novel. Images being put to words help an audience create visuals they may not be able to come up with on their own, making Fun Home and other graphic novels more relatable and understandable. Following that, why do you think this novel is important for people of all ages?
I think this novel is incredibly important as it deals with a sense of identity and repression, people really finding who they are at their core, and that can deal with sexuality, that can deal with who you identify as a person, that can deal with religion, anything really. And I also think this relates to Fun Home's very real description of suicide. Bruce's death is tragic and confusing. No one really knows exactly why it happened. And his suicide, coupled with how Alison deals with it, relates to a universal struggle people have, trying to find themselves, never finding themselves, dealing with mental illness. And I think a novel like this can be very powerful for people in the LGBTQ community and people suffering from mental illness, as it helps you get a good grip on what other people are going through and knowing that you're not alone. The focus, particularly on minorities throughout the novel, is very important, as I feel it gives every reader someone to identify with. How do/can you emphasize with the core elements of the novel?
Well, many people going through an identity crisis feel alone and like no one understands or can help them. Like you said, minorities may not always be able to identify with characters in other novels, so when reading Fun Home, they can relate to actual people like themselves. It wasn't until Alison left home and went to college that she truly embraced who she was. Myself and many others, I'm sure, can relate to truly discovering yourself after leaving a home of repression where it's difficult to be yourself. It was also easy to empathize with the suicide of Bruce, Alison's dad. It's easy to feel lost and unable to be yourself because sometimes we don't like ourselves or wish we're better. However, the novel encourages its audience to embrace who you are without fear and despite repressive influences. So lastly, Kevin, I want to ask, if you had to recommend this book to a friend, what would you say?
I'd say as the book feels real, almost like it has a weight. It feels like something powerful, that like you learn something. It's changed your life reading it because it gives you something to empathize with. It's put things in perspective. And as previously stated, people can identify with this book. While it's tragic, it doesn't feel depressing, And it really gives a sense of normality to such struggles and concepts that adolescent people go through. And as a final note, if you love the novel, you'll love the musical even more. Been a discussion on the graphic novel Fun Home. I'm Kevin.
I'm Jamie.
Whatever.